Most of us do quite well in finding our way around our neighborhoods, to school and back. Often we need reference points or signs to help us, to tell us where we are or where to go. Other times we need landmarks, a building, even a mountain to help pinpoint our position here on Earth. For longer journeys, we use maps and a variety of transportation to reach our destinations. Can you find your way? Well, I'm betting that most of you will answer, you bet, just try me. All right, let's make a game out of this question. This young professor will help me ask questions, while this young lady will help us keep score as we see how well you really can find your way. You'll be using your skill of reading maps and globes with such concepts as direction, latitude and longitude, symbols, scale, and relief. These are all important concepts that we've talked about before, which of course relate directly to knowing where we are on the Earth's surface, as well as how to find our way from one place to another. Now the game goes like this. You'll need to discover answers to examples I give concerning each of these concepts. For every right answer, you score 1 point. Try to keep your score right up here. To make sure you're ready, let me use one example just for fun. Do you remember this fellow in this position on our globe? When TV-42 went off into space, what direction was he going? If you set up, you would score 1 point for yourself. Well, so much for practice. Now let's begin the game with this important word. Today we know that all directions on Earth are determined by 2 important points on the surface of the Earth. For 1 point in our game, can you name these 2 endpoints of our Earth's axis? If you said the North Pole and the South Pole, you have a good start in our game. The poles provide us with directions on Earth. The direction of north is toward the North Pole. South is toward the South Pole. East is in this direction. West is in this direction. For another game point, what are these 4 directions often called? Cardinal directions is the answer we need. Don't forget that on our Earth, up and down are also important directions, as well as the force that keeps us from falling off the Earth. Can you name it? Gravity is right. Besides our cardinal directions and knowing that up is out toward space and down is toward the center of the Earth, we have what are called intermediate directions that fall halfway between each cardinal direction. Halfway between north and east becomes northeast. Can you figure out for another game point the direction that is opposite northeast? One last question on direction. Is Langley north or south of Middleton? If you said south, you score another point. Remember that if a map has no directional arrow given or directions listed, then you may assume that north is toward the top of the map. Our friend here reminds us that so far we've had 5 questions worth a total of 5 points. Hopefully your score equals this score. Well, now let's see how well you do with 2 fellows that you've met before, Mr. Latitude and Mr. Longitude. These 2 fellows, of course, work together to help us locate precisely any place, anywhere on the surface of the Earth. Can you remember what we call Mr. Latitude's east-west lines? It's worth a point if you can remember. Parallels. Parallels of latitude. What about Mr. Longitude's north-south line? For another game point, what do we call these? Meridians. Meridians of longitude. Both are measured in degrees of distance starting from 0 degrees. What's another word for the 0-degree parallel? It divides this Earth of ours up into 2 equal hemispheres. The equator is the starting place for measuring latitude north and south, while the prime meridian is the starting place for measuring longitude east or west. It is often called the Greenwich Meridian. Let's see how well you can do with two more examples. This fella is finding his way to New Orleans. Is he standing on a parallel of latitude or a meridian of longitude? If you said a parallel, you have another game point. Remember, parallels are measured north and south of the equator. Sometimes we need to divide degrees of distance into two smaller units of measure to really pinpoint locations on Earth. Can you name them both? Minutes and seconds of latitude and longitude are the two that do a job for us. Again, we had 5 questions worth 5 more points for you, if your memory's as good as I think it is. Well, now it's time that we looked at some symbols. In fact, a whole wall full of symbols on this huge map behind me. You know, a map is really nothing more than different kinds of symbols representing all or part of the Earth's surface. There are line symbols, international and state boundaries, lines of latitude and longitude, rivers. There are color symbols representing, in this case, the elevation of land. Green for lowlands, yellow for high plains, brown for mountainous regions. There are symbols of population. Circles for cities over 1 million in population. Squares for population from 500,000 to 1 million. Triangles representing cities from 200,000 to 500,000. Symbols explain a map. But what part of a map explains the symbols? For a game point, can you remember that most important part of any map? The legend is the key to understanding what's on a map. Most every map will have one, located usually in the lower part of the map. Often the legend of a map will include the scale of measurement as well. According to this legend, which point, X or Y, is lower in elevation? X is much lower than Y. Are there 2 countries shown in this part of the map or just one? 2, because there is an international boundary that is shown. Is Phoenix or Tucson the larger city?